Welcome to Mysterious Goings On. We're going to get right to the show after these messages. You know, I love podcasting. I have since 2006, back when you had to use like a Dixie cup with string to make the thing work. And that's why I'm so excited that we recently moved Mysterious Goings On to Anchor FM to record our podcast. I gotta tell you, I don't regret it a bit. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. And you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. I'm not going to lie to you, when I first heard about Anchor, I was a little dubious because I've been doing it the hard way for so long. But I got to tell you, it's very easy. Use a Stripe account. Get sponsors. You're not paying monthly hosting fees. The sound quality is great. The distribution is phenomenal. Friends, download the free Anchor app today if you want to start your own podcast, or go to anchor.fm to get started. Remember, you heard it here first on Mysterious Goings On. You know, there's no sorcery in having an open heart. And if that doesn't make any sense to you whatsoever, it doesn't to me either, but actually it kind of does. And I'll tell you why, because we've got a guest today who writes a lot of fantasy stuff, and it looks brill, and he's just got a great way about him, but he's also very open-hearted to some people who are near and dear to me, and probably to you if you're a regular listener to this show. He's Richie Billing, and he is a writer, editor, and marketer from Liverpool, UK. He's had over a dozen short stories published along with a fantasy novel, Pariah's Lament, which comes out on 17th of March this year. So by the time you're hearing this, it's out. Go get it. Links in the show notes. He works for a leading digital marketing firm and applies everything he learns in his work to help with book and author marketing. And I think you're going to find out, too, that he's a very open-hearted individual, because if you go to his website, link in the show note, you're going to see that he has all kinds of goodies and encouraging things for writers. And that's why I started this podcast. So, Richie Billing, thanks for joining us here on Mysterious Goings On.
Thanks so much for having me, Alex. It's lovely to be here.
So you're like me. I mean, I'm a day job PR marketing guy, so I write a lot of content, and but my true love is fiction. I write mystery thrillers, and you write the fantasy stuff, and but you just have this. Forgive me if I'm misreading it, but I don't know how I could look at your website. But you just really do have this open-hearted, we're all in this together kind of approach to writing and other writers.
Yeah, I think I have a philosophy that is based around I think everybody should write, and even if you're not writing fiction or you're writing to get published or whatever, it's just a therapeutic process. It helps you reflect on thoughts, helps you organize thoughts in your mind, and I've just always found it really, really beneficial. And when I came into writing, probably about 5 or 6 years ago, it just gave me like a complete sense of purpose. And ever since then, I've just been really content and happy with my life, even if I'm not making money, which you don't in writing. So yeah, you just do it purely for the love. And I always remember quite vividly how much I struggled when I first started writing, particularly fantasy, because I think it's a little bit more challenging to other genres, particularly if you're writing like a high fantasy, because you have to create a whole new world from scratch. There's no sort of real world references that you can make. Everything's got to be from scratch. So it can be a bit mind boggling. And yeah, I just wanted to make that process as easy as possible for other people. Because I've experienced these things. There's no doubt other people have as well. I'm sure that's part of the philosophy behind what you do as well.
It is. It's interesting you say that too, because my hat's off to you with the fantasy. Because you're right. If you think about, like I do mystery thrillers, well, everybody understands in the context, as long as I'm not doing them way back in the past, that of a place that never existed, or so far in the future that there's no frame of reference. But everybody knows what a gun is. Everybody knows what a detective is. Everybody has a general idea. Or what if you're Star Trek, for example?
Yeah,
Even though it was in the future, everybody knew a phaser was a weapon. Okay, so you didn't have to really explain. You just said this is obviously a weapon, or a tricorder. It analyzes things. Fantasy world, though, who in the 21st century has a frame of reference for something that's thousands of years in the past, and
yeah.
completely set in a world where and I got to ask you this real quick, does fantasy necessarily mean that there is magic or sorcery, or can fantasy just be completely devoid of that aspect?
Well, I like to write fantasy that's devoid of that aspect completely. I like human stories, but I like the freedom that a fantasy world gives you. There's no limit to what you can do. It's always about the escapism for me. So if I can create another world for people to go and explore while focusing on and exploring real world issues that are relatable. That's what I like to write about. So Pariah's Lament, for example, you'd probably class that as a low fantasy, because there's no magic as such. There's always a sort of a reference to it in the background, but in this particular story, it's all about people and the flaws of humanity. And that's what I like to explore more than anything. It's like what makes people do things, the good versus evil. The more trope in fantasy is the most common one, and that's what I love because you really get into the heart of what makes people tick and why they do certain things. Like why does someone who is evil or what we perceive to be evil, why do they believe that what they're doing is right? That's something that fascinates me really, and it's just a matter of perspective.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's becoming more and more accepted and understood, even beyond writers, but by audiences, that if you write good characters, even the bad guy, so to speak, doesn't believe they're a bad guy. They
Yeah,
just are going about their lives. They are the hero in their own novel, right? I mean,
yeah,
the villain is just at cross purposes with the protagonist for whatever reason.
yeah. I totally agree. And there's been some brilliant books over the years that have really skewed the traditional villain or antagonist trope. So I've recently read a book by John Gardner called Grendel. I don't know if you've ever read that.
I have.
It's a retelling of famous ancient English poem called Beowulf. You've probably heard of
Uh-huh.
that, the film. I think it has Ray Winston in.
Oh my
um,
gosh! Well, I did have to read Beowulf in middle school, so I have
yeah,
read it. So yeah, but I haven't seen
yeah.
the movie.
So Grendel is the antagonist in Beowulf, and John Gardner rewrote Beowulf but from Grendel's perspective, and it was the his most famous book, and I think it was just because it was so unique. And I think when in our life, there's nobody's perfect, nobody's purely good, nobody's purely evil. I think we all sort of live in that sort of grey area in between. Some things we do are probably good, some probably bad. And I just sort of acknowledge the fact that we're all sort of drifting in and out of the good and the bad. Nobody's perfect. Um, so I like to explore that really, the sort of the limbo zone between good and evil.
I do too. I find it much more interesting. Yeah, the mustache twirling villain gets
Yeah.
tedious very quickly, I think, to readers. Tell us about Pariah's Lament. Tell us about this. What is this story?
So it's an underdog story, and when I was tasked with writing a novel, the first thing it did was have a think about the novels that I've loved and what is the key element that has really married me to that story and made me finish it. Because I am, to be totally honest, a terrible reader. I will read the first 10, 20 pages, and if I'm not hooked, I won't finish that book. I'm terrible. I'm really bad. So when Pariah's Lament, it was like, I've got to start with characters, and I love underdog stories. I love the heroic moments, the sort of defy the odds. So I just wanted to write that kind of story. It's the kind of fantasy story I like reading. So write the story you want to read is what they say. And Pariah's Lament follows two characters, both outsiders, both underdogs, but they're at the opposite ends of the social spectrum. So it follows one character called Edvar, who's thrown into the midst of a political war, and he's naive and young and inexperienced, and he's got to try and solve this massive problem out, whilst dealing with his own demons as well. And on the other side, we've got Izzy, who's she was born with a birthmark on her face, and as a result, she's ostracized and alienated from society. She's branded the cursed one. Everyone hates her. Even her own father like beats her up and hates her living guts and stuff like that. So she is at the very, very bottom of sort of. She's at the bottom of the barrel. She hates her life. There's nothing to live for, and she gets caught up in this political turmoil that's happening in the nation and ends up helping a forgotten race of people who effectively kidnap her in order to gain her help. And the story just goes from there. It's all about these two characters navigating the events that are happening in the kingdom, and it just ends up being a bit of a medieval warfare kind of fantasy. So if you like lots of action, lots of battles, and characters defying the odds, this is what Pariah's Lament's all about.
I love how you did this. You made her, through no fault of her own, she is an underdog simply because of birth. There's a birthmark. That she had no control over it, and it shouldn't matter. But of course, in this setting, it does. And she and Edvar join forces. I love this aspect, and I like the joining forces aspect of this too. It looks like a fun journey, and I'm looking at a lot of the reviews and praise you get for this. And one reviewer said, "A tale of acceptance and confidence with breathtaking world building." Which we talked about how you're doing world building, right? The character journeys are incredibly well constructed. They are just actually buttressing your comments from earlier about how you like to write. I like to build a world, and I like good characters. Billing shrewdly delves into the very relatable human need to actualize and belong. This is great stuff here. Is it a world that will continue beyond the Lament here?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. An interesting set, to be honest, because my publisher champions something called a shared universe. So we've created, myself and three other writers, I've created a world in which we build together. So it's a bit of an interesting concept. It makes the world building a little bit trickier because you've got to fit it in with everybody else's.
Right.
But it also makes it a lot easier because you don't have to do as much. So what we basically do is there's a time period of, say, about 10,000 years, and we each populate this period of time in this world with all different stories, and then we try and weave our stories together. So yeah, it can be a bit frustrating because you might come up with an idea you really love, and then you propose it and someone turns around and says, well, that doesn't work with my world or my story or whatever, or something that I've created. So it's quite an interesting approach, and it's something that has caught people's imagination. Because if they read my book and they really like that kind of world, they don't have to wait until I write another book. They can go off and read someone else's book set in the same world. There might be some references to my book or the places that my story takes place in. So it's really interesting, to be honest. And I think I could say catching on. It's not something that I see very often.
It is, and I love that idea, and it takes a special kind of author, by the way, to do that. I think there's a lot of authors who are very not precious, but very proprietary about their characters in the world. So let me ask you this though: everybody creates an aspect of the world that's theirs, but do the other authors? Do they have Issy and Edvar in their books, or are they just part of it in the background, or do they have a cameo appearance, or are these the characters for the whole series?
At the moment, there hasn't been a great deal of overlap just because everyone is writing in different time periods. There's a bit of overlap with one of the other writers in my story, and I think we're going to try and link some of my characters into his story. So that remains to be seen. I haven't really intertwined anyone else's stories into mine too much, but I think as we produce more stories, more content, it will flesh itself out. There'll be a lot more links to other people's works, and I think it'll be a really enjoyable experience for a lot of readers.
Well, I have a fellow author, and we just did we call them Easter eggs. We did a little Easter egg in each other's book. It's not anything more than a thin tendril, tenuous bond between my world and his book's world, and sharp-eyed readers, one or two have caught it, and and it's delightful for them. I think readers love that stuff. You see that now. If you're into the Marvel Universe movies, I mean, everybody's in. There's different characters, like it may be the Iron Man movie, but at the very end you might see Samuel Jackson's character. You might. So I think. Do you think, at least, I'm asking you what you think, but do you think that is a faddish thing to do, like a fad that will go away, or do you think it's something that will just keep going? People will want to see those little intersections.
Yeah, I personally love those little details as well. So the idea of putting at least Easter eggs in stories is fantastic. So I think a lot of people really enjoy it, and particularly if you challenge readers to go out and find them. It's like when you play a computer game, like you see, I always used to play Halo, and there always used to be like little things you could go and find on the maps, and I'd be obsessed with going to find these things, and loads of people love that kind of thing. It's just applying the same principle but to writing, and not everyone's going to pick up on it because people read for different reasons and people read in different ways, but there's no harm in putting these little extra details in, I don't think at all. And for those readers who get a lot of satisfaction out of it, it's so worth it.
I also did one thing in my second book. I put about a dozen direct lifts from famous movies in the mouths of our characters, and just one. My lead character is being chased by somebody in a boat, and I went back to Robert Redford and Paul Newman's Butch and Sundance film, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. And when they're being chased by the posse at the end, they keep saying, who are those guys? So I put that line in there, and then later they're getting closer and closer. And then, of course, I couldn't resist saying, I think we're going to need a faster boat instead of a bigger boat, which is out of Jaws. But readers tell me that. They say, that's so corny, but I laughed out loud when I read it, and I kept reading. So there you go, right there, right? You keep their attention, as you said, because if I want to keep Richie Billing attention and beyond 20 pages, I'm going to throw in an Easter egg, I think, in the first 20 pages. I'm going to have to do that, aren't I?
Yeah, definitely. That'll have me hooked. I'll be buying the whole series.
Well, this is fascinating. I love this. Let me talk about what you're doing with your website. I love this. Folks, you got to check this out. It's richiebilling.com. There'll be a link in the show notes. What I love here, he does something. I'm talking to them now, Richie, pardon me. I'm going to talk to the listener directly. He does something here that is so generous and open-hearted. He's got 100+ book reviewers list, free for the asking. Go get it, and he tells you how to pitch these reviewers, gives solid advice. Don't just send them your book without asking. Pitch them. Tell them what you're doing. Make sure you are not pitching a romance book to somebody who only does fantasy, right? Don't do those kind of rookie mistake things that'll get you kind of crossed off the list by some of these folks, because if they're a good reviewer at all, they're inundated, probably, right, with lots of books, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Definitely. I think book review in particular, when I was promoting Pariah's Lament, it's when you find reviews, it can be quite tedious. It's definitely a numbers game, and it's purely for the fact that you said these poor book reviewers are absolutely swamped. You must never, ever imagine a day when the inbox is clear of email. It's just completely inundated.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
So I was just going to say, it's just, you really do have to sell your work. You've got to make yourself stand out, and like you say, pitching. Like I have little jokes about like in the subject line of the email, like I'll say, "Oh, not another book review request." So like things like that, just to make yourself stand out a bit more because you're just swamped. And I do a bit of work for the publisher and review email submissions and things like that. And it's just that the email inbox is just littered with the same subject, same line, and you need something that will help you stand out. That is going to make that person think, "Oh, that looks quite interesting. I'll click on that." So yeah, book reviews. There's a detailed list on there, but it's definitely in need of updating. So that's something I do have. I think there's 100 book reviews at the moment. I think I've got an extra 150 to add to that list.
Oh,
So
well,
I will be doing that.
And I was, well, see, your work is never complete if you're doing this, but I was cheered to see that some of these also do mystery thriller, which is what I write, because I was thinking, oh, a book review, then it's like fantasy only. I thought, oh no, but there's mystery thriller on here as well, because I'm gearing up for my push. My book's coming out in Halloween, and
Okay.
I'm getting everything lined up and pre-orders and all that stuff, and it's a lot of work, but it's fun, and I appreciate this list. I went ahead and signed up for your email list. Thank you very much. And when you
Oh, yeah, I
sign
saw
up for
that.
this, yeah, you sign up for this, you get a free copy of his book on writing, his thoughts, we call Thoughts on Writing, and his collection of published short stories, Flying on the Ground, which I love that title, by the way. That's
Yeah.
really great.
Any Neil Young
Um,
fans will get that one.
there you go. So tell me though, there's so many more. There's a whole tab here on writing tools, fantasy publishers, fantasy magazines and journals. I mean, this is like, folks, if you're a noob writer, if you're new, these writers markets. They sell these, or they used to at least. And here's Richie giving you kind of at least a very good start, if nothing else. So was this just was this something you did straight away when you first started and got the website set up, or was it something you, after your travails as a writer, said, I want to give people the things I maybe didn't have? How did you come about this very open-hearted approach?
Yeah, it's definitely tied to what you said at the end there. I was going through all these things. I was spending hours and hours and hours on Google looking for publishers for magazines and whatnot. Um, so I was putting lists together of the places that I'd submitted stories to. So I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Why am I just keeping this information to myself? Why aren't I sharing it with everybody else? Because there's no doubt other people who have experienced what I've gone through, and you just don't, you want to save them the time and the effort. And now you want to save people the money because there are paid services that you can go on, like Duotrope, which I have to say, Duotrope, I subscribe to Duotrope. It's great. Um,
Oh yeah. Oh, I should check
yeah,
that out.
yeah, you can find agents on there, publishers for magazines, for novels, everything like
Can you spell that?
novellas. Yeah,
Can you
it's
spell that for us?
DUOTROPE.com, and you
Okay.
get a free
Yeah.
30-day trial. So
Hmm.
if you've got a short story that you want to get out there or a novel, head on there and just have a little check. You can loads of the really good filtration process. You Publishers advertise on that website themselves, so anyone who's listed on there is open and looking for submissions.
Hmm.
So it is. I think it's like $5 a month, which is if you use it a
Wow.
lot, it's well worth it.
Yeah.
Um,
See, there you go again, just offering all this wonderful advice and help to people. That's so great. I love that. Is this also you write your podcast is the Fantasy Writers Toolshed? Is that more of the same? Is it plenty of writing tips and tricks and help and advice?
yeah,
What's that? What goes on this show of yours?
yeah, it's pretty much that. So I probably 2 3 years ago now, I put together a book called the Fantasy Writers Handbook. And this is just a collection of all the things that I've learned over the years about how to write a fantasy novel. And so it looks at everything from world building to creating characters. To be honest, a lot of the book is just general story writing advice that I've learned from other writers over the years. It's some of it is like my own thoughts and ideas, but it's generally things that I've learned from much better writers than me. So like Henrik Ibsen, Lehos Igri is probably one of my favorite teachers. He wrote a book called The Art of Dramatic Writing, which is just made so much sense to me after reading that book. And that was the turning point for me, I think, reading that book. So I just talk about what I've learned, and that's how it came about. And then what I tend to do as well when I get time is carry out a bit of research. I think I've carried that over from university days, the academic days. Um, I'll ask just polls, researching people, asking what the thoughts, the feelings are on different things. So for a fantasy writer's handbook, I structured the whole book around one question, which was, what is the biggest reason why you stop reading a book? Because I think it can be quite difficult to pinpoint why you like a book. Sometimes, I mean, you might say characters and things like that, but sometimes you just like it and you don't really know why. But when you don't like a book, you can pretty much guarantee there's a definite reason why you don't like it. Say, oh, I couldn't get into that, too slow, characters were all over the place. So I carried out quite a bit of research, which you can read on my website. And a fantasy writer's handbook just is structured around that research. So as a result of the feedback I got from writing that book, people were saying you should do more and different formats. So I decided to give podcasting a go because it's all the rage nowadays. I really enjoy it. I don't know about you, but once I started doing it, then I caught the podcasting bug. Never looked
Well,
back.
it is. Yeah, I've been doing this off and on this show since 2016, and I've got another show I do for where you know it'd be more in tune with our day job. It's PR, marketing, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I do that, and it's great, but it does. I warned you, my friend. It can potentially take over your life, especially once you start interviewing guests and things. Because I'm on this guest service, and I had to absolutely. I'm like 7 or 8 weeks ahead on both shows, and I literally had to turn off the show on there just to say we're no longer accepting guests at the moment because I'm just overwhelmed, and I don't ever want to be rude to someone and just say no. Although I do have to admit occasionally I have to say no because maybe somebody's means well but maybe wouldn't necessarily be a great guest. So, but that's pretty rare. Usually we get some really good folks, and but I'll warn you about that if you go further, because right now is your show's a monthly, right?
Yeah, it's just really because it can be a bit tricky recording because my co-host J.M. Williams, he's based in South Korea, so it's either he's up first thing in the morning or I'm up really late at night, or vice versa. So,
Oh my gosh!
so you can generally tell when you're listening to some of the episodes that they go on for some of the longer ones, and about halfway through you'll notice that my speech starts slowing down a bit, and I start making less sense. As you start getting into the early hours of the morning. But
and where can people? I assume that's all the usual spaces, right? Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can find it just about everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, one of the best things about podcasting, it's just the tools at your disposal. They make it so easy. We use Acast, and it just like as soon as you're linked with, or like Apple, Spotify, you don't have to do anything. Just upload it to one website and it distributes it all. So if anyone's looking to get podcasting to go, I wouldn't hesitate, because it really is. How have you found it? Like the setup and distributing things, how have you found it?
Yeah, well, because when I start. Of course, I'm very old compared to you, but I started podcasting in 2006, and back then it was a nightmare to record it, and then forget about people carrying a smartphone in their pocket. They had to have an iPod. And they had to go find it and download it, and people didn't understand what it was. I'd be like, it's like a radio show, but it's recorded. Well, why don't I just listen to it when it's on? I'm like, no, it's recorded. Yeah, but why would I want to listen to a recording of a radio show? Because they had it in their mind that radio is live and current, and if you wait, it's boring. And I'm like, no. So we had all that, and all the way just to like interview somebody over the phone. Anyway, I won't bore you with it, but now, oh my word, you're so right, my friend. You just like Acast or Anchor or there's several of them. You just go, and it's so easy to put together. There's really no and I'm going to echo what you just said. There's really no excuse if you want to have a show. I mean, Anchor, the one I've been using for this show, I moved over from Libsyn. I don't even pay hosting fees every month anymore. I just pop it up there, and I actually get a little bit of money because I have a little ad for Anchor on there, so I get a little bit of money back, which is nice.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think it's a great way to reach other people because not everyone reads anymore. I mean, our lives
Mm-hmm.
are so busy. A lot of people I chat to now, they listen to podcasts when they're doing boring jobs like washing up or driving to work. So you're reaching a whole new audience. And I can't believe, I mean, we've done very little promotional work on the podcast.
Mm.
And after about a year, it's got like over 1,000 followers on Spotify alone. And I don't know how that's happened because we haven't really done anything but just click publish and hope for the best. And
Right.
so there's definitely a growing market for podcasts and audio books as well. So if anyone was thinking
Mm.
about going down the audio book route, it's it can be a little bit a daunting task. Have you done any audiobooks before?
Right. Right. Well, what I'm looking too at your shop here on your website, and
Oh
you
yeah,
offer some great freebies here. I love it.
yeah,
This wonderful mug or a beaker. I don't know what do you call it? It's a ceramic
yeah.
mug. There you go.
Just launched this shop actually in the last few days. I've got the
Um,
mug.
I,
Yeah, I
I
just
want the
designed it myself.
T-shirt. I want the T-shirt. That's the one I want. It's a write drunk, edit sober, ideally not hungover. That's exactly
Yeah.
right. Wow. I'm gonna have to save up and get that. That's a great looking shirt. I love it. I've got one of these too on my site for my books and stuff. And I don't sell a
Mhm.
ton of it, but I think it's nice. I did sell a few mugs the other day to a friend who posted it on Twitter, and it was lovely to see it out there. Not in my own
Yeah,
kitchen for once, but
yeah.
that's really good. So what in the minutes we have left, I'd love to get your take on something here. What about writing, if anything, for you? And this could be your fiction writing or your day job writing. Okay,
Yeah,
whatever you want to say, however you want to address it. What about it is therapeutic for you?
I think it is the escape that it gives you from the problems of everyday life. So for that hour, I mean, you can probably apply the same principle to anything really, like meditation, playing computer games, anything. But for that time, I am not worried about anything else that's going on in my life, and I can really lose myself, particularly when I'm writing fiction. And there are times when I want to sort of try and make sense of what's going on in my life and the thoughts swirling around my head. And I can do that by sitting there thinking about how to put that down on paper. And once you start structuring your thoughts in a formulaic way and getting it out, sometimes just getting it out of your head is massively
Yeah.
beneficial. It's similar to just like therapy, just talking about your problems. Instead,
Mm-hmm.
you talk, you're having a conversation with yourself. Essentially, you're just getting them out. And I always remember I was going through a bit of a rough time. This is a good while ago, and I remember I just had this story in my head, and it was related to what was going on, and I wrote it in one sitting. And I remember, like, I was at some part of it, I was just crying because it was things that were coming out,
Oh.
and it was so beneficial. I just felt like so much better after finishing it that I've realized that this is something that so many people will benefit from, and it's something that I'm trying to encourage more this year. Now I've got the novel out the way, I just want to focus more on encouraging other people to write. So I'm planning to launch a writing course called Project Anthology sometime this year, which guides people through the process of putting together a short story anthology that is designed to teach you every facet of storytelling, as
Ooh.
well as promoting your book, publishing it yourself, and marketing it. So it'll take you through the whole process. And I just want to give people the tools to go off and do the things that they want to love, that they love to do, which is because writing, everyone seem to think that you have to have some sort of qualification, some sort of talent, some skill. You don't. As long as you've got the enthusiasm to write and share your ideas, your thoughts, your stories, that's all you need. And that's what I'm trying to encourage people. I just want them to sort of capture that enthusiasm that you first get when you're writing and try and prevent all these nasty, frustrating things like writing rules, what 10 things that beginner writers always do. Just forget about all that. Just focus on the enthusiasm. Here's some tools that'll help you. and just write for the love of it.
That's that is a remarkably kind, and again, you keep saying open-hearted, but that's what I see when I see you and hear you talk about things like this. Way to do this, and I think I've been guilty of being a little overly protective of writing in the sense that here, and just forgive me if I could go off on this for a moment, but
Yeah,
I was I studied writing. I was a journalist, and I've written several books and all this. And my only concern and I want everybody to try to write. I want everybody to do what you
yeah,
said exactly. But my only concern is I just want to make sure, though, that people, before they hit publish, that it's the best the work can be, that it's edited,
yeah,
that it's professional as possible, because it has an unfortunate effect on all of us when people put out stuff that's very enthusiastic,
yeah,
but perhaps not the quality level where it could be. And I don't
yeah,
mean like that doesn't mean like their work could not have quality. It's just some people get so enthusiastic they go right to Amazon with their first draft and publish it
mm,
with the cover that looks pretty bad.
yeah.
And I just think it hurts us a little bit. Tell me if you think I'm
It
being
has
snooty. It's fine.
no, no. It definitely it saturates the market, completely
Yeah.
saturates the market, and it creates stigmas then around the likes of
Right.
self-published authors, because everyone thinks that self-published books then are just unedited, rushed to publication, whereas it's not like that. Like a lot of I know, well, we're following the trends recently in the publishing world, and a lot of selling authors are now being told to set up like an indie model of
Yep.
marketing themselves,
Right.
and so it just goes to show that as if you're an indie author and you want to go it alone, build a team, get an editor that you trust and that you work well with, an artist who can do all your artwork, and beta readers, which you can just develop over time using people who follow you or helping other writers out, vice versa. And it's there's a lot of work goes into self-publishing, far more than it does traditional publishing, I think, because they've got the resources and an established team. So it's not fair to stigmatize these quality self-published authors just because they decided to go it alone. And the fact that the market is so accessible to everybody else can create swathes of let of things that just haven't had the same level of investment in time and effort and money, I
Right.
suppose. But so it definitely does hurt the market. And I think that's what I try and encourage people to do. What I'm going to in this project is explain to them the importance of doing all these tasks um, and treating it like a professional thing, because you don't want to release something that you're going to be embarrassed about
Right.
or is going to get criticized.
I totally agree. And I'm glad you're going to encourage that, because we're not trying to discourage people from writing. We're just trying to encourage you to make sure that if you do go it alone, it's the best work you could possibly put out. I call it the
Yeah,
bucket list effect. There's just this bucket list effect where people who are like, I always wanted to write a book, I'll write a book. And
yeah,
their goal is just to kind of get 150, 200 pages together and upload it with a cover. And look, I wrote a book. And that's great. Fine.
yeah,
Just please, if you're going to do that and you're only going to write one book in your life, why not make it the best damn book you can
yeah,
write? Get it edited, get a good cover, right?
yeah, most definitely. No regrets.
Yeah, let me climb off my soapbox now. That's the American saying. Let me get off my high horse, whatever you want to say there.
Yeah,
I just, because my job, because I do, yeah, I'm right there with you, Richie. Is I want to encourage writing. I do. I just want to encourage you to do the best work, because don't put out something that in a few years you're going to look back on and cringe and go, oh,
yeah,
why didn't I have a good editor take a pass at that, or why did I do the cover myself, that kind of thing. But anyway, enough of that. Richie, what is coming up next for you? Where do we go? What do we do to see? And I assume the smart money is on signing up for your email blast, but what's next for you?
I at the moment just focusing on getting some new stories all drafted and written. So I'm working on a little fantasy novella, which I've never written a fantasy novella before, so that's something new. And I am moving away from fantasy sort of as well, and
Oh,
sort of going down your route. I love thrillers and I love crime thrillers in particular. So I'm writing a sort of, I call it a Scouse crime fantasy. So
Scouse, I love it. I love it.
yeah,
Yes.
Scouse crime. So it's a crime fantasy story set in Liverpool. And I'm having a lot of fun writing that because it's very different to fantasy. I've got all the real world references, so I don't have to build a world. I just have to introduce some sort of fantastical elements to it. And I love my city so, so much.
Yeah.
And this is my love letter to Liverpool in a way, and the people of Liverpool. Because we just don't give up. No matter the adversity thrown at the place, the people, they're so resilient. And I just want to sort of pay homage to that, really, because I owe the city a lot for who I am, and I'm proud of where I'm from and who I am. So it's my little love letter to Liverpool in a sort of fantastical way.
I think that's fantastic. And I see you're a fan of Ian Rankin.
Oh, I love Ian Rankin, yeah. Big Reeves fan.
Oh, man. Well, I was going to say, in that same vein, you're talking about the Scouse crime fiction here. If you're into Tartan Noir, there's a gentleman I interviewed on this show a year ago. Gosh, it seems like he's coming back later this summer. Douglas Skelton, and I invite you to check him out. Douglas Skelton. He is really moving up there, and Ian Rankin loves him. Ian Rankin's done a blurb for him and said lovely things. So, Douglas, if you're listening, yes, again, I am touting your work. Come back on the show. But Richie, I need you to do me a favor. Assuming I haven't run you off, when you do have that book out and ready, would you come back and let's talk about it?
Most definitely. I'll come back whenever you want me to, Alex. It's been lovely chatting with you.
It's been lovely chatting with you. Again, it's richiebilling.com. Don't worry about writing it down. It's in the show notes, or go to mgopod.com and you can go there. And when you go to Richie's website, first stop after you sign up for the newsletter, go to the shop and look at this great mug and t-shirt. You can also get an autographed copy of Pariah's Lament, all this really cool stuff. And Richie, can I just say on behalf of as a fellow writer, thank you for what you're doing to encourage a new crop of writers and to help ensure the professionalism of our craft. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Alex, and thank you as well, because you do everything that I do, and that's why I admire your show and all the work and effort that you put in. So it's great to chat with someone who's of a like mind, and thanks very much again for having me on today.
It was absolutely my pleasure, sir. If I haven't mentioned it recently, you can get 10% off an autographed John Pilot mystery novel just for signing up for our email list. All you have to do is go to mgopod.com, roll down. Well, you can also do something else. You can click to put a little money in the tip jar, so to speak. You can donate to the show by clicking on the PayPal or PayPal credit link or your other debit or credit card, and you can drop $1 or $2 in to help support the show. What a great thing to do. But otherwise, you can save 10% off an autographed book if you just sign up and subscribe at mgopod.com. Go there, scroll all the way to the bottom. You'll see a box that says subscribe. You get 10% off your first mystery novels purchase when you sign up for our Best Podcast newsletter. The first time you get an email from us, write back and say, hey, I want my 10% off code. It's that simple.
Hi, I am Connor Brayton, host of the Story of a Storyteller podcast, author of The Longest Night and General Egypt, and you are listening to Mysterious Goings On.
Thanks so much for listening to Mysterious Goings On. Don't forget we have a complete archive of all of our interviews, monologues, updates, live readings, dead readings. All of that stuff is available at mgopod.com. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to us so you never miss an episode. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the usual suspects. Please join us there. Again, don't forget, mgopod.com also has links where to find me on social media and how to get in touch in case you want to be a guest here on the show. Well, I think it's time that I move on for this week, but until next time, keep reading. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt, huh? Not quite Mysterious Goings On, listeners. You probably haven't got the brand new Mysterious Goings On official t-shirt.
This is a quality cotton t-shirt coming in a premium unisex tee version and a women's slim fit tee version in all the sizes you could possibly need. These are great quality shirts coming in a variety of colors, including dark heather gray, black, charcoal, maroon. And on the women's t-shirt, we come in dark heather gray, black, charcoal, indigo, and midnight navy. There you go. Check them out. They are in the show notes. The link is right there. They're being sold on Bonfire. They're typically sold in batches, and they'll come at you pretty quickly. All the instructions are on the website. The link is in the show notes here or at mgopod.com. Again, show the world, well, at least show the world on Zoom, or show the world when we can finally really get out and about. Show the world that you have some mysterious goings-ons of your own by wearing our t-shirt, and help support this show. Thank you so much.